Good morning, everybody. It is 6:14 a.m., September 28th, 2017. That's Eastern Time. I wanted to get this out last night, but I figured it was probably a better idea to wait a little bit, let everyone breathe for a minute, and wait till this morning, which was actually a good thing because there was some stuff going on about this Maria here possibly moving up towards New York, New Jersey, and that type of stuff. But we waited, we woke up this morning, and we can clearly see, at least at this point, that the jet stream is beginning to push Maria to the east. You can see it's kind of dropping. Those bands were hitting, almost hitting Delaware and South Jersey. So there was some question marks about whether it would still continue to move north towards New York. It doesn't look like, as of right now, that that's going to happen. You can see Maria's getting pulled away from the coast now, almost moving in a southern, southeast direction. It looks like, but what you really have to focus on is where the eye is. So the eye was right here. As of yesterday, and you can see it according to the graph charts here, the grid lines. They're really important to use those so you can really see what direction the inner parts of hurricanes are moving. That's what we use for Lee. But you can see Maria here is getting pushed to the east. That is a good thing. Hopefully the jet stream will do its job and bring it all the way out. And then, guys, we're going to have to worry about our friends over in Ireland and London. They're going to get smashed with this weather, at least according to the data now. Very quickly, here is Lee, and if you notice, I wonder if I can zoom in a little more. Okay, good, I can. We dealt with this with Jose, if you notice. There's some shear winds hitting Lee. You could see those big ripples going on in the eye wall. Those are winds coming off of Maria and a mixture of the jet stream passing over top. You can see the jet stream here. So it finally made it at least to the east coast, the northeast. The bottom part of the jet stream is actually still getting hung up around Texas. You could see this band right here. I'll back up a little bit. I'm a little zoomed in. Okay, that's a little better. You can see how it arcs up. The bottom part of the U got caught up in Texas with Pilar, if you guys remember. And so the top part of it, the northeast part of it, started bending over, and this got hung up here. So we're waiting for that to pull over and then collapse onto Maria, and then eventually we should start seeing Lee making an eastern movement. It is moving north right now. It has been downgraded to a Category 2 storm, so that is good news. That is from these shear winds. You can see those ripples going on. That's when you know there's shear winds. I actually took a picture from Jose. This was back when Jose was... Wow, it just disappeared. Back when Jose was an issue, I took this picture, and this shows those shear winds that we were talking about, those ripples, and that's what was keeping Jose at least pinned down for a little bit and stalling in the Atlantic. A little bit of a backtrack for you, but just a good example to show you those shear winds, those ripples. That means you're getting high winds from the global winds, shear winds, those high altitude winds. They're very powerful. Airplanes have to watch out for them, so do we. But there you have it. Lee is a Category 2 storm. Maria is down to a tropical storm. It's clearly getting forced down into the east. Let's hope that that path continues. But guys, just as these two look like they're going to be out of our hair, our chances of a tropical cyclone formation in the Caribbean and then into the Gulf possibly has doubled overnight. We are at 40% now over the next 5 days, and then 20% over the next 48 hours. And we talked about this last night. We explained why this is happening. We were talking about this way before they put the warnings out, because we saw it, guys. We saw these storms exploding down here. You could still see them, and we can see this counterclockwise tropical or counterclockwise cyclone formation. Sorry, guys, it's super early. The cyclone here is forming, and it is moving south. And we talked about last night, the next thing what we were going to see that we didn't want to see were these storms that were puffing up, getting pulled into this counterclockwise motion, and that's clearly what's happening. These storms, as of 48 hours ago, were spinning completely clockwise in a motion like this, and now that this counterclockwise motion is moving south, it is starting to pick these storms up and move them in the same direction. Now, we might have some help with this. Like I said, the animation charts are beginning to show this forming as a tropical storm. This may be Tropical Storm Nate if it does form. That doesn't mean it's going to be a hurricane. The name is given once it's a tropical storm. So just because a storm is given a name, that doesn't mean it's going to be a hurricane. But this may be what we see the beginnings of Nate. This would be Tropical Storm Nate, and then in turn it will turn into Hurricane Nate if it makes it that far. Now, one thing we have going for us is this bottom part of the jet stream is expected to fold all the way over from the northeast and then collapse down onto Virginia, North and South Carolina, eventually Georgia, and then eventually Florida. Florida's going to be getting a lot of rain. Whether this storm develops or not, they're already getting all this moisture pulled right up into South Florida. There's going to be a lot of rain there. If you guys haven't heard about it yet, you will if you live in Florida. Texas is still getting drenched with this system down here. There's some big hail going on in this area of the country right now because there's a front or a system that is just lingering there. It's stuck behind the jet wall, actually. And we'll talk about that later on this afternoon. But main concern right now, guys, is our now 40% chance of cyclone formation in the Caribbean, which is going to put the Gulf at risk, and it's going to put the immediate east side of Florida at risk. And I'm going to explain a little bit why that is. We're going to show it on the models of why we're looking at this. Here we have our radar map of the Caribbean and the Gulf areas. I couldn't even use this map the last couple days because of all the storms going on down here. I couldn't even see the continents. You can kind of make them out right now, but again, guys, just look at these storms exploding in South Mexico. These are big storms. This is actually going to cause a tropical depression once again down in the Pacific Ocean. They're already showing signs of that happening, so the Pacific is going to stay active. Now, the thing, what I was trying to explain before is this one thing we have going for us with this system that might be Tropical Storm Nate is that the bottom part of the jet wall is expected to fold over and collapse over this area, and that's eventually going to bring that rain out of Florida. They're going to get rain for the next couple days. Again, this all may change, guys. You know how this works by now. But we are getting that cyclone formation. I do see a tropical depression coming as early as today. So, again, don't be surprised if you see that. That does not mean it's going to be a hurricane, but the conditions are there. So that's what we need to watch out for. And especially, guys, over the next few days, as this front wall passes out and leaves the area, that is going to leave this entire area vulnerable and open for these storms to form even quicker. So it's going to be an active October. I'm convinced at this point, just seeing this much action in the Caribbean and in the Gulf, and even there's still systems coming off of West Africa, guys. So one of the models, might be the GFS or the European model, actually shows a system still coming off the west side of Africa. So we still have to worry about hurricanes coming from the Atlantic, and then we have the entire month of October to worry about that are showing cyclone after cyclone after cyclone just forming here in the Caribbean. So we may be dealing with an October that was just as busy as September. I hate to say it, but it's just looking that way. There's so much activity going on down here, and with this counterclockwise wind happening, it's just connecting all these storms together. So we may very well see a tropical depression as early as today, and then if it turns into a tropical storm, that will be named Tropical Storm Nate. Alright, you can see here, guys, on the 48-hour outlook, we have doubled percentages now. We are at 20% for cyclone formation, and then over 5 days, we have doubled to 40%. So it's happening fairly quickly. If you guys remember yesterday, they were both at halves. They were at 10 and 20%, and then an hour before I posted that video, they were both at 10%. So rapidly forming cyclone formation in the Caribbean. And guys, the sign of this, it's like it was such a quick shift. We didn't see one storm in this area besides Franklin that formed just about a week and a half before Harvey formed. We saw one storm form here in the Caribbean, and now all of a sudden, since we've almost into October, we see multiple storms forming here. I'm going to show you that on the Canadian model here real quick. Actually, the Canadian model is what's showing the storm coming off of West Africa, showing that the Atlantic is still going to be active at least for the next couple of weeks, which is kind of disturbing because it should be over by now, and it should be getting most of our storms from the Caribbean here. But I'll move forward. You could see Maria and Lee here. Hopefully this is what happens to them. We can see Maria already moving to the east. Let's hope it stays that way. Not good news for Ireland and London, areas like that. They're going to get slammed with this at high speeds too, guys. The jet stream is whipping out into that area, parallel with Canada when it comes to the U.S. So I'm going to move forward here. There's that system that's coming off of West Africa. Looks like it's forming right over the Cape Verde Islands, which is fairly common for tropical storm formation. This is that low that we're talking about right now forming. Now, the Canadian model doesn't have this exactly forming into a hurricane. It might be tropical storm strength at most. We still need to watch it and make sure, and that is because of the collapsing jet stream wall. So again, that is somewhat going to help us. I hope it stays that way and we don't get a formation of a hurricane. But right after that, guys, you notice this storm coming off of West Africa is right here, and it's really low, and it's in the Leeward and Lesser Antilles Islands. And if this thing forms, we're dealing with the same situation. We got to worry about this coming into the Gulf or going up the East Coast. So we're going to be watching Africa once again. We should not have to be watching it this time of year, but now we have to. And we have this forming in the dead center of the Atlantic, this cyclone formation. And it's actually showing a movement towards the East Coast before another part of the jet stream that they are predicting to show up comes and swoops it out. So guys, we may be dealing with another type of storm like Lee in the middle of the Atlantic. We could be dealing with another storm that comes off West Africa, and all while that we're dealing with the action going on in the Caribbean, which is predicted to just produce storm after storm after storm, just like West Africa did for the month of September, guys. That's just not something we want to see. We will go over to the GFS. I'm going to back it up and hit play so the frames can load. Maria, Lee. And again, guys, had we not had the jet stream wall, these two systems would be interacting and spinning around each other like a big old dance. We were talking about that. All right, there's the formation coming off of West Africa. There's no low attached to it, at least on the GFS as of now. Moving forward, there is a major hurricane forming in the Pacific based on the GFS. That is by October 5th. Big system up in Canada reaching down to the northeast. I wonder if that's going to be something interesting. But guys, I want you to just look at the winds here. These little feather looking things, those are wind direction pointers. And you can see there's just the counterclockwise cyclone deal going on in the Caribbean nonstop. So even when we're not seeing those major thunderstorms exploding, the currents are just swirling around here like this, almost waiting for those storms to form. And once they do form, that momentum sticks them together. And that's why this area of the ocean gets so active. We get this counterclockwise swirl going on in the Caribbean and also parts of the Gulf. And again, these storms form down here in that warm water, and then it pushes them over Cuba, towards the Bahamas to the East Coast, or they go up into the Gulf. And once they do that, we just don't know, guys. The Gulf is a very tricky area. Storms don't just have to follow a straight path and go into land, and that's it. We saw with Harvey. Harvey went in, came back out, went in again. So the Gulf is like a special area for storms. And then the Caribbean being so close to it, it's just a bunch of recipes for not so good weather. So we just need to keep an eye on it. We got to keep watching this stuff. Here is the European model. Maria, Lee, they also get pulled out according to this. Again, right into Ireland and London, guys. That is some crazy weather they're going to get. Here is that low coming off of West Virginia. So they are also predicting that as well. Sorry, that's my phone alarm. And we'll move forward. There's the low there. Here's that low system forming in the Caribbean. And they show, this is what I'm concerned about too. This is October 8th, so this is once that jet stream wall comes in and takes out Nate, if it gets a named storm, that's what's going to leave this area open for that cyclone formation to constantly be spinning. So any group of thunderstorms that forms in this area has the potential of being swept up in this counterclockwise motion and then turned into a storm. They even pointed this out on the Weather Channel that after the jet stream wall passes over that really deep U that we were talking about, and then it's going to push Maria and Lee out, that's when we really have to start worrying about the Caribbean, because it's a constant clockwise motion, and all you need to get those tropical depressions forming is the explosion of storms, and it is nothing but activity in this area. So again, guys, that's why I'm putting out these warnings now about constant tropical depressions being formed in the Caribbean over the next 3 weeks. It's not going to be a surprise if we see that. With hurricane season as active as we've had, and this switch happening so quick, it's usually the second week or first week of October that you start seeing this counterclockwise constant spin in this area, and we already have it, and we're still in September. So that is definitely significant to watch. It's something to pay attention to, and I want to show you guys one more thing before we let you go this morning. All right, and last but not least, we have our Morphe Composite chart here. I was waiting for this to actually load a couple more frames, but here we go, guys. You can see the counterclockwise spin below the Cape Verde Islands beginning to happen. It comes off of West Africa, and then it buckles, and then it begins to do that spin in a counterclockwise motion. And guys, those are the first signs of a tropical depression. And I know we've been talking about the Caribbean being the new area to watch, but we saw those lows coming off on some of the animation models. So guys, here it is right here. This is counterclockwise motion. You can see it right below the Cape Verde Islands. So we need to watch this too. This could very well develop into a tropical depression. The water is still warm enough to happen. We still have that east to west wind band coming off from the strong shear winds that are not ripping this apart as of yet. It's allowing it to begin that counterclockwise motion. You can see it happening there. And then we also have what we've been talking about the last 2 days, the counterclockwise motion coming off of Florida and South Georgia and picking up all these storms that are exploding down in the Caribbean and turning that into yet another tropical depression, which will more than likely be Nate. If this one forms first, if this forms first, this will be Nate. And then this would be the O storm, which I think is Ophelia, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But hopefully we don't get that far. We're waiting for Nate, and that should be enough for us. But guys, that's all I have for you this morning. I hope everyone has a great day. We are going to touch base once again later on this afternoon. We're going to talk about our comet, which doesn't look like it survived around the sun. We will look at it, though, and see if we can find it. But again, guys, main concern right now, 40% chance over the next 5 days of cyclone formation, maybe being our next named storm, Nate. You could see it right here, guys. That is counterclockwise motion, and we have a lot of warm water and storms for it to pick up. All right, guys, that's it for now. I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you all very much.